Hello and welcome to State of the Economy. Today we will discuss how a recently set up high-level committee on food procurement reforms headed by BJP leader Shanta Kumar has come up with recommendations which tend to dilute the very food security legislation which was passed in the parliament with a full majority, overwhelming majority. And why is this happening? And to discuss this, we have in our studios Professor Jean Drèze, a leading development economist and a very passionate advocate of basic welfare program as a precondition for economic growth, and Ritika Khera, who is an associate professor at the IIT teaching economics. Welcome to our show. Jean, I'd like to start with you. And could you tell us, tell our viewers, why a committee which was set up to review food procurement program, why is it having such a negative impact on the very food security legislation framework itself and in general nutrition policy itself?
Well, I think that the recommendations of the committee, which incidentally exceed their terms of reference because they were not asked to comment on the Food Security Act, these recommendations will throw a huge amount of chaos and confusion around the implementation of the Act, which would be very unfortunate. To see the consequences, I think that we first have to always remember the nutrition situation in India and how alarming and serious it is. The latest reliable national survey on child nutrition goes back to 2005-06 and shows that India has the highest levels of stunting and underweight in the world, and there's no indication of very substantial progress since then. Some surveys indicate some mild progress, including a government-sponsored survey by UNICEF. There are other surveys like the India Human Development Survey which indicate very little progress. What is clear is that the situation remains very, very alarming, and that India still today has among the highest undernutrition levels in the world. Now, nobody would argue that the Food Security Act is an adequate answer to that problem. It's a partial answer. It can address some parts of the problem. I think it can achieve three important things. One is to eliminate hunger in the raw sense of having to skip meals and go to bed hungry. That is an indignity that cannot be tolerated in the modern world, even if the numbers are relatively small, and they may not actually be that small, but anyway, that's a different matter. But even if they are small, this is something that cannot be tolerated, and that I think the Food Security Act will hopefully prevent to a large extent. The second thing is that it will contribute to better child nutrition, both through maternity entitlements, which are a very important part of the Act that everybody tends to forget, and I hope that we will talk about them a little later, and also through better nutrition programs under midday meals and the ICDS for children under 6. And thirdly, a well-functioning public distribution system, as we know now from many states, including Tamil Nadu, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, and even Bihar, is a very important source of economic security for poor people. You know, poor people have so many contingencies: unemployment, sickness, crop failures, all kinds of things that blight their lives and make them insecure. And the fact that if you have a ration card and a well-functioning public distribution system, and you know that at least there will always be food in the house, I think that's a great relief for poor people. So despite all its flaws, and there are many flaws in this Act, I have many criticisms of it myself, but still I think it can make a very important contribution to food security. And the recommendations of this committee, if accepted, I think would create a lot of confusion by changing the framework in the middle of the implementation process for no purpose other than to save money. I think that would be a very unwise thing to do.
Okay. So Ritika, now what do you think is the idea behind the recommendations of the Shanta Kumar committee report? I believe that they are suggesting that the leakages in the PDS system, since you've worked a lot on PDS reform, is very high, and people are contesting the numbers that they've come up with, 46% leakage. So do you think that's adequate reason to review the entire Act as it stood and as it was passed by every party in Parliament, overwhelming majority, including the BJP? In fact, the BJP said that they wanted to follow the Chhattisgarh model, which meant going way beyond the 67% population being covered now to 90% plus. This was said by Rajnath Singh, this was said by Modi, and Mr. Modi also talked about further increasing the coverage, making it universal, increasing the monthly quota of food grains. Now, what's going on? What is this reversal about?
So I think there are lots of important points that you make. The first one is the BJP's doublespeak on this issue. At the time of the food security bill being discussed, the BJP's main objection was that it was not doing enough. They said you should increase the entitlements, increase the coverage, increase the number of commodities you give. You should give pulses and edible oil also. And now Mr. Shanta
Mr.
Kumar,
Modi spoke about increasing
Yes,
the coverage,
that's right.
bringing more items also.
That's
yeah.
right. And now Mr. Shanta Kumar at the time of submitting his report is saying, you know, we supported the bill at that time because we were afraid of suffering in the elections, but now we can speak our mind more freely. So that's one part. The only basis for reducing coverage of under the National Food Security Act is a number, is the leakage number that they have. As it happens, that number is incorrect, and the committee has actually accepted that now, that they got the numbers wrong. And what we find in our calculations is that at the national level, the leakage level is lower than what they are suggesting. More importantly, it has been coming down over the years. So it was in 2004-05, it was 54%, and now it's come down to 42%. Even that is too high. We would be the first ones to say it. But if you look at the India Human Development Survey, that's showing a much lower leakage rate of
Down to 30%. Right?
That's right. What's even more interesting actually is the fact that states even like Bihar, Orissa and Chhattisgarh have been able to reform their PDS. In Bihar, these estimates are suggesting a reduction in leakage from more than 90% to about 24% in 2011-12, and in recent years, since 2011-12, I think there has been further improvement in the state. Why and how has this happened? I think the original goes back to the Tamil Nadu model, that basically states like Odisha and Chhattisgarh began to look at Tamil Nadu and see what they did. So there are two sides of the story. The first is to increase the demand on the system. And how did that happen? They brought more people under the PDS. So people like you and me became part of it, and when we are part of it, we can exercise our rights much better. The second thing that was really important is the reduction in PDS prices. From 4 and 6 rupees, it was brought down to 1 or 2 or even 3 in Tamil Nadu, and that increased the pressure a lot.
And some of it was paid for the state government also, right?
That's right. So a lot of states started making their own contributions over and above what they were getting from the
So it's been working
center.
well in that sense, yeah.
Yeah, so I think there is a lot of political commitment now at the state level to make these programs work. Another thing that helped on the demand side to create pressure on the PDS is to have very clear entitlements and to raise levels of awareness, because when people know their entitlements, they're able to fight for them also. Equally important were the measures on the supply side. So the computerization of the entire system and this use of very sensible technology has helped tremendously to clean up accounting practices. Doorstep deliveries have helped, because earlier what used to happen is that a lot of the leakage happened between the FCI go down and the local ration shop. And so now what the state governments are doing is to tell the ration dealers that you stay where you are and we'll arrange for the transport to the village. Another thing that has helped is to deprivatize ration shops. So they've been taken away from private dealers and are being handed over to Gram Panchayat, self-help groups, cooperatives. And that has also put the fear of God in the dealers, because they know that their shops can be taken away at any time. Yeah. And finally, official commission rates have been rationalized. So if a dealer wants to run his shop honestly, then he is able to do it now, because the coverage is wider, so the volume is higher, and then per unit their commissions are higher.
Okay. So Jean, I'll come to
Can
your
I add one point on the leakages? You know, it's not only are they lower than the committee claims, and they have been coming down over time, but the other important point to note, which is not mentioned in the committee, and maybe they didn't have the data at that time, is that the remaining leakages are overwhelmingly concentrated in the APL quota, the quota for so-called above poverty line households.
So you can fix that in some
yes,
way?
Yes, but see, the reason for this is that the APL quota has essentially been used as a dumping ground for excess stocks in the last 10 years. You know, the procurement went beyond what was required for the BPL quota, and so first of all, huge stocks accumulated, but when even that was not enough to take care of the surplus, huge amounts of foods were dumped into the APL quota without any attention to transparency, without people knowing what were their entitlements, without trying to monitor the dealers.
And later they will be exported.
Both the National Sample Survey and the IHDS, the India Human Development Survey, show very clearly that the levels of leakages are very, very high in the APL quota and not so high anymore in the BPL and Antyodaya quota. So that is very important.
The real problem is in the APL
That's right.
quota.
And the Food Security Act is an opportunity to phase out the APL quota and to bring the bulk of the population into a set of common and clear entitlements. And that will fix a very large part of the remaining leakages problem. That's very important to me.
Yeah, and John, here I want you to talk about the Bihar experience, because people thought that Bihar, nothing works in Bihar, and you conducted a survey, a sample survey in Bihar in some districts, which showed that there's 80% success rate in reaching the PDS to the intended beneficiaries.
Yes, let me explain
and the leakage in Bihar, I believe, has come down from 90% to...
Yes, okay. So it's not just our survey. There are at least 4 independent surveys now which show very clear improvement in Bihar in the last few years. There's the National Sample Survey.
So how much has come down to leakage?
I'm coming to that. So the National Sample Survey, India Human Development Survey, there's this survey that we conducted last December in 4 districts of Bihar, and there's a 4th survey that has been conducted by research scholars at the Delhi School of Economics, all showing massive improvements. So we have to recall that throughout the 2000s, the last decade, the leakages in Bihar were in the range of 80 to 90%. So the PDS was basically open loot. Almost all the food was going straight to the black market, and people didn't get hardly anything. And now we are seeing from these 4 surveys a huge improvement in the extent to which people are able to secure their entitlements. For example, we found in that survey of 1,000 randomly selected households in 4 districts that among those who had a new ration card under the Food Security Act, because Bihar is now implementing the Food Security Act, in the month preceding the survey, those households that they had been able to secure about 80% of the food that they were entitled to, which is still too little. I mean, there's still 20% gap, but it's an enormous improvement compared to what used to happen in Bihar.
So therefore, you're suggesting that it's better to consolidate on these improvements.
Absolutely.
Rather than go in the reverse direction.
Absolutely.
John, we'll take a small break here and come back to you. Please keep watching RST.
My guest is none other than the redoubtable Major General Mahmood Ali Durrani, former National Security Advisor of Pakistan.
I think there is a feeling there that maybe Modi has horns. What was happening in Kashmir was low intensity war. We were trying to bleed India. What has happened? India is the same size. We are divided in 2. War is not the answer between India and Pakistan. We have to have peace.
Watch former National Security Advisor of Pakistan Mahmood Ali Durrani discuss India-Pak relations in To The Point, only on Rajya Sabha Television.
उस्ताद बिस्मिल्लाह खान, महान शहनाई वादक, जिनके नाम है कई उपलब्धियां। कांस कलो महोत्सव में शहनाई वादन को दी नई बुलंदियां। आजादी के पहले जश्न में लाल किले से गूंजी उनकी शहनाई, और फिर गणतंत्र दिवस पर भी उस्ताद ने बेमिसाल धुनें सुनाई। भारत रत्न के रूप में उन्हें मिला देश का सबसे बड़ा नागरिक सम्मान।
In the Maths Factor, we travel through time and space and see how maths has evolved and how it is a part of the world around us. Join us on Rajya Sabha Television. Watch the Maths Factor every Sunday at 8 AM.
Welcome back to State of the Economy. So, John, you were, please continue. You were saying something about Bihar.
I was going to say that the Bihar experience is very significant because it takes place in one of the worst governed states of the country. Even today, despite the improvements that have happened in the last few years, whatever they are, Bihar is still one of the states with the highest levels of corruption and poorest governance. And even in that state now, we are seeing massive improvements in the PDS, largely because the assembly elections were coming up, and therefore there was a real effort to make the PDS work.
So you're suggesting that there is a general improvement in the governance of food distribution system across the board?
Not across the board. What we are seeing is that in all the states where there has been a serious effort to reform the PDS, there have been results. Whether it is Chhattisgarh, of course earlier Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Orissa, Bihar, even hopefully now very soon, I'm hoping in West Bengal. So there's a clear roadmap, and incidentally a lot of that roadmap is included in the Food Security Act. You know, all the reforms that Ritika has mentioned are mentioned also in the Food Security Act. So we have a pretty good idea of what has to be done. The question is the political leadership going to do it, or are they going to side with the corrupt dealers who are making the system? That is really the bridge that has to be crossed, and the Food Security Act is an opportunity to push that agenda further and to extend the reforms across the country.
Okay. Now, Ritika, Chhattisgarh BJP government has been claiming their food distribution system as one of the biggest success stories. In fact, during the Chhattisgarh elections, if you remember last, they really tom-tommed that. Now, do you think that these BJP governments which claimed their system as such a huge success would want to accept the Shanta Kumar committee report and reduce the coverage to 40%? Is that the sense that you get politically on the ground? Because you work at the grassroots level, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit hard for me to comment, but I would imagine that once you've given people ration cards and they've gotten used to getting grain every month, that it's not going to be very easy to take that away from them. And this idea of replacing ration with cash, that also I don't think is going to find very widespread support at the local levels, because people have all kinds of apprehensions about cash. And as you know, in Delhi they tried out one cash transfer scheme, Annashri, where they were giving 600 rupees, and even that failed to work in a city like Delhi. So I cannot understand how they expect it to work in.
Do you think a hybrid model could work for APL class if some people want cash? Some sort of hybrid model could be implemented, or will that create a bigger mess?
I think if it's tried out right now, it will definitely create a mess. And maybe once you've allowed the Food Security Act to find its feet, then slowly you can start thinking about these things in urban areas. Yeah. And at that stage, when you have all your computerization complete and you know, the nuts and bolts have been put in place, accounts have been opened, then you can try small pilots in urban areas to see how it goes. But if it is tried out right now, it will just lead to mayhem. That's my...
John, what do you think of cash transfer in a limited way?
Well, I would not be in favor of what you call the hybrid system, but I would not be necessarily against giving people the choice at some stage in the future, not right now, but at a stage when the PDS has been fixed and has been working well.
Right now, we want this system to consolidate.
And that's right. And once the PDS gives a minimum standard, that has to be matched by cash transfers for people to prefer that. And if it's a real choice, not a, you know, this is a big issue because the government is not used to giving people choices.
So it should be demand-based.
It should be demand-based, but I think that's sometime in the future, and starting with the areas of the country where there's
maybe
less
4-5 years down the line. Yeah.
No, I think perhaps even more than that, but one can debate. But the other point I'd like to make is that the advocates of cash transfers should be working on maternity entitlements. Maternity entitlements of 6,000 rupees for all pregnant women has been a legal right of all women in India for almost 2 years, and there's hardly any discussion of this. And I think that the real test of this government's acceptance of the Food Security Act will be whether in the next budget, which is coming very soon, are they going to finally make a provision for maternity entitlements or not? And this would be something very good for the cash advocates to work on and demonstrate that cash transfers
think cash transfer might work for the maternity entitlement?
You know, we are not opposed to all cash transfers. We have supported cash pensions for a long time, and I support maternity entitlements. So I would like to see these things work first and then discuss whether it's a proper alternative to the PDS.
Okay. So Ritika, so this, you think that for maternity entitlement, this budget could provide adequate funds, and will that satisfy advocates of the Food Security Act?
Well, the maternity entitlements are part of the Food Security Act. The Food Security Act includes the ICDS, Integrated Child Development Services, Midday Meal Scheme, PDS and maternity entitlements. And if people are so gung-ho about cash transfers, then this is the first one to start with, which is
You can start
maternity.
with this, so-
Yeah, it is important not just because it's a cash transfer, but also because as far as nutrition is concerned, cash transfer, the maternity entitlements can make a big difference, as well as the ICDS program. And it would give us an opportunity to see how cash transfers take off.
And John, are you satisfied with the progress of the socio-economic caste survey, based on which we have to determine the 67% population to be covered under the Food Security Act?
Okay, well, the short answer is no, but I think we have to explain the background a little bit for the audience. So the Socio-Economic and Caste Census is a survey that was conducted in 2011 around the country, across the country, collecting demographic as well as socio-economic data like people's assets and occupation and so on. And it was meant to be used to identify eligible households under the Food Security Act, essentially by using what we call the exclusion approach, which is very different from the old BPL approach.
Asset-based criteria.
That asset-based, but it could also be something like government jobs. So you identify the households that are relatively well off, maybe they have a government job, or maybe they have a four-wheel vehicle, or more than a certain amount of land.
So you exclude them.
those, and then everyone else is eligible by default, which actually is a much more reliable and inclusive approach.
robust
than
way
the
of,
BPL,
yeah.
Now, for that, of course, you need the data, and unfortunately, after 5,000 crores of expenditure and 4 years, the data is still missing for a large number of districts. In fact, among the major states, about half are still missing the data for some districts. Bihar is one important
I
exception.
believe UP is also, it's not complete, is it?
UP is almost complete. A few districts are missing. Jharkhand, many districts are missing. Orissa, many districts are missing. Many other states as well. And that is holding up the implementation of the Act in many states, which I think is very unfortunate. And one reason for that is that there's no sense of urgency. I don't think many people realize to what extent that data is important for the implementation of the Act. And because of that, the resources are simply not being put into the completion of the exercise.
And actually the Bihar experience shows that if you have that data, then it simplifies to a large extent the process of implementing the Act in the state, because it gives you a basis on which to proceed.
And Joe, in the context of decentralizing our polity and giving people the choice, do you think at the panchayat level a choice could be given on some of these aspects at a later date, as you said, whether they want cash transfer system or a hybrid, or you think that's a possibility at a political level?
It's a possibility, but these things really have to be seen to work on the ground. I mean, it's very easy to float the idea of giving people a choice between cash and food, but to make it work in practice is a complete.
The point is that a system that is working now, why dismantle it? That's the bigger argument, right?
The point is that right now, in a very short period of time, we can make the PDS work for poor people, and we still have huge food resources. Don't forget that one of the interesting things mentioned in that committee report, which has some positive things after all, is that the country has exported 40 million tons of food grains in the last 2 years. I mean, this is the biggest binge of food export probably ever by any country in history. And this is, 2 years ago we were being told that this Food Security Act is impractical and infeasible because it will require too much food. But now 2 years down the line we find that the country has exported 40 million tons of food. So what we are saying is, let's use that food and make it work for poor people. Let's provide them some relief, fix the PDS, and then in due course we can discuss the issue, the possibility of cash as an alternative with proper safeguards, including not only it being a real choice, but also, for example, indexation. This is a very important fear that poor people have, and very legitimate fear.
Inflation indexation, right?
Yeah, I mean, look at pensions, which have not been increased now for about 10 years.
That's a big risk in cash transfer.
Yes.
That's right.
How often does the government do inflation
That's
indexation?
right. It's very easy for a government advisor to say we can index. Of course we can index, but is it going to happen? That's what the poor person wants to know.
In fact, someone in a survey in Himachal Pradesh said, हमको पता है सरकार कब बढ़ाएगी, जब election होगा तभी बढ़ाएगी. But it turns out even in the case of pensions, in fact, even that has not worked.
So a lot of homework, infrastructure, safeguards would be required, I think, before cash is a real alternative to food. At some point in the future, obviously you're not talking of food forever. I mean, when people become substantially better off at some point, I think they do prefer cash, and why would we stand in the way? But I think that's really quite a few years from now.
And John, one bigger question which you have been advocating: welfare programs must precede growth. That is history of growth in any country would tell you that welfare did not come after growth. Basic welfare had to precede growth, whether you talk about health, education, whether you talk about food, security program, etc. Now, the stage of development that India is in, there seems to be a certain anxiety on the part of the government to correct fiscal deficit, and the axe naturally falls on some of the welfare programs to correct fiscal deficit. Now, how do you see this problem?
Okay, so first of all, you said I had been an advocate of welfare programs as a precondition of growth. It's not completely true. I mean, it is a precondition of growth, but more importantly, I think it's part of the constitutional rights that people have to education, to healthcare, to social security. So I see it more, first of all, as a contribution to people's quality of life, and also, as it happens, as an important requirement of growth. I think that's quite important. Unfortunately, a completely artificial opposition now has been created between growth and social security.
Yeah, this binary that has been created.
Yeah, as if one
that's what I was getting at.
I think that's a very important part of this whole framework of policy today, that we think of economic growth and social security as being opposed to each other when in fact they are not. And I think what is also very misleading is the impression that is being created that India is a kind of nanny state which has gone overboard in providing so-called handouts to people, and now it's time to reverse that and concentrate on growth. I think that's completely contrary to the fact. I mean, India is one of the world champions of social underspending, with much lower levels of spending, in particular on health and education, than most other countries in the world. I mean, especially strikingly so in the case of health, but even in the case of social spending as a whole. So I think first we have to recognize, number one, that social security is not inimical to growth. Secondly, that we have a lot of catching up to do, that we still have a very underdeveloped social sector. And thirdly, that there are real possibilities of constructive action there, that it's not a waste. True, there are problems, there is corruption and so on, but these things can be addressed. That's one thing we've learned in the last 10 years.
So you say corruption cannot be a reason for just dismantling the existing welfare system?
I mean, if you make the same argument for other things, then people will look at you like you're mad.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you very much for talking to us, Professor Jean-Dres Ritika. That's all we have in this edition of State of the Economy. We'll be back with you next week. Thanks for watching.